Morning, everybody. I'm John Wagshall from your college counseling office. I'm here with Darnell Haywood, our director of college counseling, and Jen Fitzpatrick, our associate director. And we are thrilled to be with you all again this morning for the second in our three-part series of parent coffees on college planning. And today's is, as you can see, college counseling, college visits, seeing colleges. And this is going to be a deep dive into information on a topic that your students are already hearing about in college counseling class. You would have gotten some information on this in your junior parent night. But we're just going into more detail here because we think this is important and we really want to be helpful to y'all about this. Just a couple of details as we get rolling. We are recording this presentation and a link will be available in the Viking Voice. So for your own benefit, or if you're talking to friends and you can pass along that detail, that's great. Also, we will be taking questions, but we're going to ask for questions at the end after we finish the presentation, and we're going to ask you to give us your questions using the chat feature here in Zoom. But we look forward to being available to you to answer what questions you might have. Hey, just as a heads up, as we get into this, you should know that 2 out of your 3 presenters today have I guess would fall into the category of we just did this with our own children. So this is definitely a topic near and dear to us. We want to talk about this now and get ahead of this, planning ahead, because you need to plan ahead. And while all are welcome here today, we're primarily focusing on parents of juniors. So if everybody else, feel free to listen in, and we hope you find it informative, but junior parents, you're the primary attendees for what we're discussing here today. Because when it comes to formal college visits, this really is mainly a junior year activity, not sooner. That's not to say that for others, like sophomores, you can never or should never visit a campus. You know, picture yourself on the drive to see family members going to your grandparents, for example, and you see a road sign for a college campus and you want to go take a swing through and just sort of do a drive-by and get a little familiarity. That can be a lot of fun, and we certainly encourage that. But serious visits, for reasons we'll talk about more as we get going, that's really something we recommend for junior year. So if we go to the next slide, please. So we're going to start with the obvious, at least for the time being. Sadly, COVID is really putting a damper on our ability to physically visit the colleges, but we do still want to talk about what you can do, because this is really an evolving area. You should know that most colleges right now are not open for visitors. And when we say they're not open for visitors, that can mean slightly different things. In some cases, that means that there are no formal visit events going on that they're hosting. In other cases, it means literally that the campus is closed. You can't drive on or walk around. So that's a case-by-case situation. But all the colleges are really growing in their availability of online and virtual options, whether we're talking about tours or information sessions. And by necessity, they're getting better and better at this in how they're putting these things together. And this morning, we're going to show you some examples of what you can do to make the best of this situation during the pandemic when it comes to seeing colleges. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to my colleague, Darnell.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, John, for getting us started on this presentation. And I want to start by saying that typically we'd be saying, look at your open weekends, go on a road trip, see colleges, and that is not the case this year for the class of 2022. We want to acknowledge the sense of loss with that. This has been a real rite of passage for junior students and families at this time of year, and also the worry that accompanies the fact that you are not going to have the traditional looking at college experience. But we want to pivot the way we've been asked to do in so many ways in our life right now during the time of a pandemic, and ask you all to think about this creatively and to be flexible in your thinking about this, and to be aware of the opportunities that are out there. When I was thinking about this last night and about the way that I wanted to talk with you about this, I thought about when my sons were in kindergarten at Columbus Academy, and I'm sure that this happens at a lot of other schools as well. But if you went to kindergarten at Columbus Academy, what happened was they said, pack your bags, you're going to China. And our kids had a little passport and they came to school and they watched a movie on going to see China and they learned about China on that day. It was certainly not the same as visiting China, but in their minds, they felt that they had seen it and they'd actually learned a lot. And what we are asking you to think about right now is as you attract this biggest school project ever, how are you going to do this in this time? And what we wanted to let you know about is what John mentioned on the last slide is all of the new ways that colleges are trying to help you learn about their campuses and help students and family with that. So as you sort of embark on this chapter of seeing colleges and learning about them, we wanted to let you know that between now and the end of spring break, we want all junior families, students and families to virtually visit 4 colleges and universities, really at least 4. Some may visit more. We want to think about the scheduling of this, and we're going to talk in our very next college counseling class, the class that we start today, with students about how to find out about these virtual visits. And once students have joined the mailing lists at colleges and universities, and once they've learned about this visit, you register for programs. Now, the creativity here may be that you say as a family, hey, we're going to stream this in our living room. We're going to spend 2 hours learning about University of Cincinnati, and we're going to watch their presentation, which is a marketing piece. It's a way for them to tell you about their school and what they want to highlight. But then if that piques the interest of the student and family, then you can go and dig in and find out more information from the school newspaper, from other sources that we'll talk about. We want you all to, through these visits, try and get a sense of the ethos of the school and what they are stressing as important about their programs. So we want you to be able to say, although it's not the traditional road visit, I'm going to think about and engage with colleges and universities. And one little tip that I thought about, you may want to schedule the visits, the 4 visits, in a geographic region, sort of mimicking the way we would typically do this. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the presentation, so that when things open up, you can hop in the car and see some of these places. This may be a way to find your way into the learning about colleges and universities. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we're talking about, the joining of college mailing lists. This is more important than ever. And the example I'll give on this is that my son, who's a senior, was talking with Mrs. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Wagshall, and they said, Liam, join some mailing lists. Well, then what happened was we got postcards at home saying, here's this program for juniors, junior visit day. We'd like you to come see our campus. And that shaped our way of going to see some schools. We as parents would not have known about this if our child had not joined the mailing list and we weren't getting snail mail at home. And then also students get email announcements about this. They join with their Columbus Academy email address. And today we are starting this with the group of students in our college counseling class, and that will happen over the next week with your students. So I guess I would say, I don't want you to run home tonight and say, did you join a mailing list? We heard all about joining a mailing list. This is a rollout process that's happening for those students at the right time, which is this week. And really, that's a lead up to thinking about days that they have off of school, President's Day weekend, and a Friday before. Maybe you as a parent help your child by saying, hey, on President's Day weekend, I would like you to virtually visit 2 colleges. I would say that parents may have a little bit more of a need to use some executive function here in helping their child figure out when to schedule this before you were telling them, okay, we're going to hop in the car and you're captive and we're going to see the school. But now you may be saying to yourself, okay, if we get to the first 3 days of spring break and I haven't heard anything in our weekly talks with our student, our child about college counseling, I haven't heard anything about any research on colleges and universities through virtual visits, then your alarm bell should be going off and you might want to reach out to your child's college counselor. One thing I want to say about joining mailing lists and virtual visits is underscoring this is the importance of visiting schools, virtually visiting schools with a wide range of admissions selectivity. You do not only want to be visiting schools with a low admit rate. In fact, you should look at this as a way to say, gosh, we're going to have our foundation schools for my child, schools that they know that they can get into and that they're going to get excited about going to college instead of this anxiety of, I really love that school, but I wonder if I can get in. We want to really encourage you to think about that. Okay. I think that's, oh, and one other thing, Mrs. Fitzpatrick always tells me to talk about, that what I want to talk about with that is when you visit the foundation schools and you visit schools where your student is, where the student is a good match, that's what we like to call spending time in what we call the swing states. You will see politicians don't spend a lot of time in states where they know that they're not going to win, that the chances are low that they're going to win, and they don't spend a lot of time they spend a lot of time in what they call the swing states in order to make their presence known. And Mrs. Fitzpatrick will talk to you about some of the reasons why and why now this is important. Great.
Okay, so thanks, Darnell and John. Quickly before we leave this slide, we flashed this up as an example of how to join a mailing list. We picked Rollins College for this one. The very first thing you're going to do is, go to the admissions and financial aid website. And then they all call it something different. Some of them call it request information, like you see here. Some of them say inquiry form or send me more information. You got to dig around on some of the websites, and then you'll see a form that pops up like the one in step number 3, where they're asking about your name and your address, further down about your academic interests. And that's important because we're going to talk a little bit more about what happens after that as an example.
And that's for the student to fill out. That's for the student, not the parent.
Right. Yes. Good. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about, even in the pandemic, why, the importance of why and why now of seeing colleges. First and foremost, we know nobody's like dying to do more Zooms, but your kids have to get into, we're talking about juniors now, it's really time to dig into the college research. And as Darnell said, we will have some time to do this in college counseling class, but we won't have enough time to do all of what the juniors need to be doing, right? So in addition to these online sessions that we're talking about, we've put some books at the bottom here, that books and websites that we think are particularly helpful. But when you do a virtual visit, that's really where we see the informed consumer part of the college research coming into play, right? So we're going to teach the kids how to look at a brochure in our college counseling class, what you see in a book, and then what you hear from admissions professionals and what you hear from students who are going to be doing some of these online tours, folks who are going to talk to you from different academic departments. The greatest thing about some of the online options that we're seeing is the information that the kids are getting is very specific. Whereas in an admissions presentation, you might hear the full arc of admissions from the School of Engineering, the School of Education, et cetera. For a student, when they're signing up now, they can pick and choose what they sign up to hear. As you heard Darnell say, our goal is really by the end of spring break for each kid in the junior class to have done at least 4 online visits. We want to talk a little bit about, in addition to the selectivity in terms of looking at a range of colleges, we want our kids to be looking at a wide range of colleges in terms of location, type of college. If it's a female in our class, we're going to suggest that they look at an all-women's college just to see. You don't know until you visit that school. We would like our Black students to look at an HBCU. If a student says they're looking at a small school, we'll say look at a big school. If they say big school, we're going to say try a small school, because this is how you learn about college. It's the same way you would try on a pair of shoes that you think look, oh, those look great. They look like they're my size. You try them on and they may not fit. So we do want our students looking at a wide range of colleges as they do these visits. The marketing piece, right? A lot of this is still controlled by the admissions office, but our kids are going to start to have opportunities to ask questions, and that's really important. We're going to give them ideas of some questions to ask, whether it's a virtual visit or later when they're getting to do live visits, but questions to ask to sort of ferret out the details that are important to them in the college process. And then we get to the piece about demonstrated interest. Really, the main reason you are doing this college research is to learn about colleges. We have demonstrated interest at the very bottom. A, because not all colleges consider demonstrated interest. And junior parents, you know what we're talking about. We talked about this at junior college night. But demonstrated interest at the colleges, where this is important. Joining the mailing list, they see who you are. They know when you come to a virtual visit. They know when you come and step foot on their campus. These are all things that you register for. And these are things that colleges that take demonstrated interest into account. This is important, right? They want to know that the students are as interested in them as they are in the student. Okay, so let's talk about how you do a virtual visit and how you go about setting this up. So we have 2 slides and we're using Ithaca College in New York as an example here. So this is not something we recommend for sophomores. Sophomores, we're hoping that later on in your junior year, you're able to do this live and in person. But for junior parents and juniors, almost every school has sunk an incredible amount of time and energy and money into robust online offerings. So this is an example. And I found this just by simply Googling visit Ithaca College admissions. And when you get there, you can pick a day on their visit calendar. I chose February 10th. And these are the options that come up for me. There's an option at the bottom to learn about just straight up, admissions. It's a college information session. That would be your traditional admissions information session. You see it's at 7 p.m. In the middle, you'll see there's a session from the School of Business. And at the top, a session for students who are undecided. You'll notice these are at 4 and 7 p.m. So this is when Ithaca is hoping most high school students and their parents might be available to sit down and do these. And when you click on the actual event, it will have you RSVP, get a Zoom link. This is stuff that we're getting used to in the pandemic. For juniors, we have begun to build college lists with your kids. And for parents, you can see that the beginnings of a college list in their Maya accounts, and you can link right to these college websites. So how can parents help? So we told you about joining mailing lists, and your students are doing that, and they will presumably get information about these virtual visits. You can also go online. You can say, I've heard my student talking a lot about Case Western. I'm just going to Google Case Western and see when they have online sessions available. Find a day and time that works for you. I had a meeting with a student and parent yesterday, and I suggested, again, as juniors, we're only talking about this 1 day a week in the family. So at your Sunday powwow, let's sit down and say, here's the college I really want to research this week. I'm going to read about it in some of the guidebooks. I'm going to read about it on the Maya Learning, and I'm going to find an online session that I can attend with my family. Okay, so we want you to take advantage of the time you have now, right? In the pandemic, the beauty is a lot of us have more time so that when things open up, we're ready to go. We say to ourselves, okay, I did that online virtual visit. I loved what I heard. That's definitely a school I want to go visit with my family. All right, so we just want to show you another slide. This is February 10th at Ithaca College, and here's February 1st. You'll see there's a totally different set of offerings, the Communications School and the School of Health Sciences. So on any given day at a particular school, you'll see they have different things that are being offered. A reminder to everybody that this is the sure thing. If you register for this session on February 1st, you are going to be assured that there is a presentation at 6:00 p.m. from the Park School of Communications. You can see it, you can register for it. Unlike just showing up at a college campus, which we've heard some juniors talking about, like, I'm just going to go there. We just want to warn you, some schools are not going to be welcoming to you, even as a visitor who just sort of shows up saying, oh, I don't need a tour. I just want to show myself around. A lot of these schools are closing their gates. They don't want outsiders there for reasons we can all imagine. They want to keep the bubble. They want to know that folks who are on campus have been tested. But when they open, you can be assured that this is the first thing colleges are going to let prospective students know. They're going to open the floodgates. They're going to be begging you to come and visit. You will receive mailings. You will receive emails. Your students will receive emails. And suffice it to say, until then, we are really suggesting that the virtual visits are sort of something you spend time on. Okay. I'm going to pass it back to John, who's going to talk a little bit about when the world opens up and we can all go out and travel again for vacation and college visits, some tips about how you can plan for that.
There we go. I don't know how many times I'm going to do that. Start talking before I unmute. Anyway, thanks, Jen. Yes, vaccines are getting ready to roll out. We're all very hopeful, and we want to give you some resources for the future. And we're certainly hopeful at a minimum that this will be standard fare for the classes of 23 and 24. Um, as we said, we're really focused on the juniors. Yes, for people who are not yet juniors, you're going to have those opportunities for drive-bys. And those can be fun. Those can be great. I have wonderful memories of driving through Alabama and we see a road sign for Auburn. And just kind of on a fluke, we decided, well, let's go have a look at Auburn. And the next thing you know, we're driving around Jordan-Hare Stadium and we're having breakfast at the Tiger Time Diner. And that was a ton of fun. That's great. But in terms of serious visits, this is for the juniors when you're doing the big college tour swing. And there's a reason for this. And much of it has to do with properly strategizing and coordinating where you want to go, how you want to do your visits, which happens when you start meeting with your college counselors. And you can start to put together a list, a potential visit list based on accumulated data. You've begun to put together a record that allows you to inform yourselves about what would be a list of college visits that makes good sense for us, taking into account things like your grades, your testing, your interests, and the relative selectivity of the schools. And those are tough topics at times, but they're important topics that we do want to grapple with as we start to put together these lists. The other thing is that as it relates to timing is just this reality that we know from experience, and seriously, you can take this to the bank, that kids can dedicate probably about a good 14 months in earnest to this process. And we want them to really go at this well, hit it hard, be focused, be enthusiastic, be energized. And if we ask much more than 14 months by getting them rolling too early, even with the best of intentions and all kinds of enthusiasm, that just ends up being too much. And we don't want them to tire of this before it's before it's done, but too early in the process. So we need to really be thoughtful about what is the best way to time our approach to this, and our suggestions are sort of based on years of experience and are well tested. If we go next slide. So really, this is not much more than a flash up on this slide to get you thinking about the idea that logistics and planning are going to be important once the world opens up again and we start actually doing these in-person college trips. Once we get to that point, we will be providing you all with more specific, very prescriptive advice on how to organize and how to coordinate a college trip. So please stand by. We don't want to belabor that point right now while it's not available in most instances, but we do want you to have this in sort of in the back of your mind as something to consider for the future. Okay. And as we go, before we get to the next slide, let me just also add, once you start strategizing on this and putting together your plan, there will be a robust parent role. We'll talk about that here a little bit more as we go to the next slide. So we mentioned that by and large right now, we're looking at virtual visits, but there are some schools that are open, not many, but some. And here's an example of how you go about booking or RSVPing an appointment, a visit. Again, as Jen was saying, you don't want to just show up. In some cases, not only will you not be able to get an appointment, but in some cases you won't even be able to get on the campus. So very important to coordinate in advance, plan ahead, and bear in mind the popular dates for visits. You want to make sure that if you're looking to do something on a date that's likely to be popular with other families as well, like a President's Day, that you're going after the available opportunities well in advance. And when it comes to these kinds of situations, this kind of planning, this is good work for the parents. Yet we want to hold your children's feet to the fire and make them do a lot of the work here, take ownership of what's going on. But this kind of coordinating is good work for the parents, and sometimes actually a phone call to an admissions office rather than just looking at the website. A phone call can be a really great way to get full appreciation of what a school might be offering and how best to go about making the most of what they're offering, their opportunities. Okay, so with that, back to Darnell.
Okay, thanks, John. So this is just a flash up again to show you as you thinking about your calendar and how to plan when you should have these visits. For juniors, this should be happening really over the next few weeks. What we know in terms of what we've talked about in the junior program and we talked about with students and with parents is that we will start the application process for students in late August and in September. And so what we want to do is think about using the next few months wisely. You all are starting with that broad list of colleges, and then we'll begin to narrow it down into that pyramid that we showed you. And you want to think about when you're going to get this done. You don't want to kick this can so far down the road that you find yourself in April feeling some panic about it. In terms of what will happen right now, the virtual visits will really be kind of like an open house information session. When campuses open up, those are the things that they will have there. And interviews is something that families often have a lot of questions about. I would tell you that these are still mostly at smaller schools. At this point for juniors, we are going to say in some cases, we would say have an interview. But this is going to be, we're going to practice this in our college counseling class. This is actually in about 3 weeks, we're going to be doing this. So really around spring break would be the first time that we would tell students that we think they would be prepared with the curriculum on how to do an interview. And frankly, they'll know more about colleges and information about them before they go into the interview. That's a tip that I'd say. You don't want to go into an interview not knowing much about the college or university. You want to have attended a virtual session before you pop into Zoom with an admissions officer and don't have information about a particular school. And then the missing school, again, this is not really an issue for this year, but certainly looking down the road, we want to mention that for our younger parents of younger students who might be on the program today. Okay, next slide. So this is kind of a slide that we hope will help you distill some of the lessons that we've learned over the years about college visits. And I think that these are, some of this is semantics, but some of it is really important. You know, really, it's not we are visiting colleges. It's your student is visiting the college, university. And what we want you to think about too is that you want to allow your student to react first to what they see, what they hear, what they learn before you step in and give information about colleges and universities. We've often talked about this, that parents and students are a little bit on a different time track here. And I think it's important to consider this in that context. You may have been thinking about your child and where they're going to go to college for a long time. They are at the point of entry of this process right now. Sort of, they've been in it for a few months now as juniors, and they're moving forward. So allow for that time of growth, allow for them to have their experience of exploration and growth. And what we want to talk about, the first piece I wanted to mention was really before 11th grade, do not spend time visiting schools with low admit rates or thinking about schools with low admit rates. These are college names that are out there that our students know, and they naturally gravitate towards that. We really want them to get excited about the idea of going to college, seeing the possibility at many places that are out there, thinking about this next step of life, not worrying, do I have the transcript to get in? Are they going to accept me? Because we have found over time that shuts students down. Now Jen is going to share some of her lessons learned as well.
Okay, I think probably the biggest one is never ever visit your child's dream school first. That should not be your practice visit, whether it's virtual or live and in person. Practice on another college or university first, right? You don't want that to be your inaugural visit to a college campus. The one in the middle, we have a bullet point there that says, sometimes your child's reactions will not make sense. And you'll see an arrow pointing to a yellow brick building. And this is a story about a former colleague of mine who had been a college counselor for 38 years. And in his 38th year, he was taking his youngest child to visit colleges and universities. This is a man who lived and breathed colleges. He said, she's got a good college list on paper. This looks like a great fit for her. They were driving there, and as most teenagers do, this teenager fell asleep or was, buried in the phone. They arrive on campus. She picks her head up from the back seat. She opens one eye, looks around, and says, "I don't like it." And the dad said, the college counselor, "What do you mean you don't like it? This is perfect. Everything on paper was perfect for you." She said, "Yellow brick. I hate yellow brick." And that was it, right? So the lesson learned here is once your child has ruled something out, you know them best. Can you talk them into it? Can you say, "Oh, it's just yellow brick. Let's take a look around." Or is their mind made up? And if you have a stubborn child, I'm the parent of a stubborn child, and there is no way you are going to talk that child into it, cancel the visit, move on. Don't spend the next 3 hours fighting about, this is why a yellow brick school is perfect for you. You've got to figure out where to spend your time and energy. And if the yellow brick is not going to work, just call it a loss and move on. There are 3,000 four-year colleges in the United States. We'll certainly find some others. The open mind piece is really important. So keeping an open mind, you may see a college suggested on your son or daughter's college list, and you say, Center College. I've never heard of Center College. I wonder why my college counselor may have suggested Center College. You can ask your child, you can ask your college counselor, or you can say, let's go on, do a virtual visit, see what we can learn about Center College, and try to find ways to learn about Center and figure out where the fit might be, okay? And after you do some research and dig around, if that's a school that you don't think makes sense, that's fine, right? But we want you to keep an open mind going into it to learn a little bit about some of the schools that you may not know. We've had many students from Columbus Academy attend a school like Center or Kalamazoo or you name it. And they say, "I never heard of that school. You suggested it to me in my junior year, and it's been the best experience." So we want you to just keep an open mind in terms of the list. And I'm gonna give it back to Darnell in a minute here. The last point is really important. Whether it's a virtual visit or an in-person visit, do not visit a college in any way, shape, or form that you will not allow your child to attend, whether it's because of cost or distance or the environment of the school. If you already know that you are going to veto that college later in the process, don't let them fall in love, because if you let them fall in love, you're also going to have to make them break up, and it's a terrible thing. Emotionally, we've seen it happen. It's just a terrible thing to have to go through with your child.
Yeah, and stay on this slide for just a second, Jen, and I think I will highlight that cost piece. Parents, this is really your responsibility, junior parents, to research the cost of colleges and universities. And as we've talked about in our programming before, all of the cost data is available on college websites. It's very transparent now. There's something called the net price calculator. And students know that we've told parents about this. So they know that we're telling you to tell them if something will be out of reach financially and remain out of reach financially. And the hope that there's all of this scholarship money out there, sort of floating scholarship money out there, is really a myth at the colleges with the low admit rates. What you have to know is that colleges and universities, many colleges and universities, give generous merit aid, not at all based on your need. But those tend to be colleges that are working to recruit students and that they want to have you choose their school and they will offer this money to sweeten the package for you. And that will not be a college that is swimming with qualified applicants applying, turning away more students that they admit. And it's important for you to be aware of this at this time as you're starting to look at colleges and universities. One little fun story to tell you all too about sometimes your child's reaction. I had a student once tell me that she was interested in Colorado College. And I said, honey, why are you, tell me a little bit, what research have you done? That's so great. It's such a wonderful school. And she said, low humidity and my hair looks good. And I said, oh, honey, we've got to dig into the research a little bit more. So it's always a banner year if I don't get the low humidity. And I understand that I have curly hair, but but it is interesting to think about where students are in this process of their growth and development, and maybe getting their driver's license, or thinking about if prom is going to happen or not, or if they might find someone that they're attracted to is more important than for them digging into the college research. So we love this work with kids and love trying to bring them to the heart of this. But we also know sometimes everybody's on a little bit of a different scale in terms of how engaged they are. I see Mrs. Fitzpatrick has a good point. So
So you talk about the low humidity. Can you hear me? Okay, so Darnell's talking about the sort of the low humidity, and I'm looking out my window at these gray January and February days that we have. I will tell you that every junior I talk to in January and February says, I'd love to go to school in Florida or California. We'd all love to be in Florida or California at this time, but that may not make sense for going to college just because it's gray and cold, right? So we are used to the ebbing and flowing of what we hear from kids at certain times of the year, and trying to bring that conversation back to why would the college be a good fit, aside from the fact that it's 73 degrees and always sunny in San Diego, right? What about that college in San Diego makes a good fit for your child? We also want you to keep in mind that when you get to visit schools, and actually this we've heard from parents about this happening virtually as well, but really in the on-campus visits, allow for moments of joy, allow for unscripted moments, right? So people often ask us, how long should I plan to be on a campus? It's typically about an hour for a tour and an hour for an information session. But I always suggest that you leave an extra hour. Find the food court or the student center and just spend some time watching, spend some time observing. What's the diversity of the student body? Do I see myself in the students here? Are people talking to each other, or are they buried in their phones? Are you reading a student newspaper? When you're there, are you talking to a coach if that's important to you? Are you seeing if they have a ceramic studio if that's important to you? But you want to spend some unscripted time. And if you were my mother in 1990, you would talk to random students in that student center. And if you're that kind of a parent, I'd say go for it. I was horrified that my mother did that, but I was also in the corner listening to what she asked because I wanted to know, right? So she was the queen of just asking the non-paid tour guide to just talk about the school and to talk about the university. So think about some of those things that you're not going to see listed in the guidebooks and things that you can do, but having some of the unscripted time and the moments of joy. If you're people who love ice cream, find the local ice cream place. If you're a foodie, find a place. Stay and see a sporting event when we can see sporting events again, but have some of those moments of joy with your kid. And I would also tell you that a week of 15 college visits might sound great to a 47-year-old parent. It sounds like hell and torture to a 16-year-old child. 15 or 16 college visits in a week is just too much, right? 2 a day at the most. And also leave a day for fun. I had a family that went and did a tour of colleges in DC. They did a day of college visits, and then the next day they did the monuments. They did a day of college visits, and then the next day they did a museum. So for some of you, this may be time that you have alone with one child if you have multiple children, and time to really cherish some of the last time that you'll have by yourself with that child, with that teenager. Okay, I don't want to make anybody cry on a Wednesday morning, so I'll stop talking, pass it back to Darnell.
Great. So just a couple more things. Junior parents, I think Jen really got me in the mindset of recognizing all of those things that we can't wait to be able to do when colleges open up. And we have committed at a group as college counselors. We are going to let you know what's going on in colleges and universities. Junior parents, you'll see that right now we're emailing you every week when we're done with our college counseling class. You got the first email about that. We will keep in touch with you about what we're hearing from schools, and let you know when we hear that things are opening up. We are big on communication in our office. Okay, so next slide. Just want to let you all know that we thank you for being here. And our next coffee next week is on athletic recruiting. Jason Singleton, our Director of Athletics, will be with us, joining us as well. And we think that this is a coffee topic that's widely applicable, and they have some younger parents of younger students in there as well. But before we shut this down, we have some time for questions. So what we will do is have you all put your questions in the chat, and then we will rotate around them and answer those questions for you. But John or Jen, is there anything else I've missed? Okay. And we may have covered it all. Oh, good. Okay, that's great. So I thank you. And still terrified, and we understand that. The next question is, should the kids sign up with their personal or school email? We think it's best for students to sign up with their school email. That attaches them to Columbus Academy that way, but we also are talking with the students a lot about managing the emails that come in. This can be a little bit of an overload for kids and for kids at this age. So either create, and I'm not very good at this either, and the students know that about me. But maybe Jen or John, you could talk about your wonderful organization systems.
One thing I've been doing with some of my juniors, so we're talking about signing up for mailing lists. One of the things that happens if your child has checked yes on the PSAT or an AP exam, they may be getting lots of mail from colleges as juniors that they already know, like, that's not one that I'm going to be interested in. We are empowering them to go on, not to block, right? Like the juniors are like, I'll just block that person. Like they're used to blocking a person on their phone. You don't want to block the email. You want to go to the bottom, and we are empowering them to unsubscribe. So you can unsubscribe to an email. It's not a rude thing to do, right? The kids are like, oh, I feel so bad. I'm telling that college I don't love them. The college wants you to tell them that. They don't want to spend their time on a student who has zero interest. They will spend their time on lots of other kids. So we are empowering kids to say, go ahead, unsubscribe, because we want you to be reading the emails from the schools that you find interesting, right? So unsubscribe from the ones that you said, I'm done, I'm not interested, and do subscribe and do read and do click on the emails that you're getting from the colleges on your list.
Okay, Don, you go.
Sure. So this question, how do we really differentiate if we're doing this virtually as opposed to being able to actually visit the campus? And I'll tell you, it's a great question. And I'm sure reasonable minds can differ on this, but I'll offer you my view. And that is that this is a bit of a double-edged sword, because sure, it's true that when you're working virtually, you don't have the opportunity to step on the campus and feel the buzz, feel the vibe. And sometimes that can be important. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes that really is a big difference maker. I know for my daughter, for example, when she walked onto the campus of the college she ended up attending, that really made an enormous difference for her. So that's there. On the other hand, sometimes in its own funny way, operating virtually actually is very helpful when it comes to sorting things out and being objective about the decision making that you're going to do. When you visit a campus, you are prone to be influenced by some more of the marketing that they've fine-tuned over the years because they've got you right there on the campus. Plus, one of the things that I have seen is that oftentimes for the students, when they visit the campus, it tends to be a little bit of a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I've thought before I go there that I'm going to love that place, then everything I see is through the filter of the fact that I've already decided I'm going to love that place, and I do. Or if I've decided in advance, I'm not sure about this place, then I come in with a little bit of a negative spin, and I tend to not like it so much. Whereas online, I'm looking at data, I'm filtering information, and sometimes that little bit of added objectivity is actually helpful. Darnell, what do you think?
So I think that I just thought of this, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know much about it, but I think that this is college visits in the age of Match.com, which is before we used to go to a party, see someone cute, and then get to know them, over time. Now we're getting what the profile is, what the Match profile is, and then we're meeting up with the person afterwards. So some of that, what John talked about, that energy, that excitement, we're hoping that that will happen a little bit later, but right now they'll look at everything the college says about themselves. And I think I'll tie into that the college fair. Let me tell you, NACAC had a huge college fair that we publicized to all of our seniors and juniors in the fall. Colleges and universities are planning robust programming for this. Nothing that we could do could really attract the same level of leadership and expertise that they are hoping that they put out there when they open it up to schools widely and to students widely. We find that that colleges and universities have that. Having said that, you know, if your particular child is feeling like they want to engage more, we really do have a robust list of contacts with colleges and universities, and we can gear them towards people to talk with. What we have found is that that you have both the sort of firsthand knowledge, the factual knowledges of colleges and universities, but you also have opinion pieces. And a lot of the opinion pieces that are out there are in things like the Fisk Guide to Colleges. This is like a review, and every year this is updated with the most up-to-date information and gives you kind of the skinny. And the interesting thing about something like Fisk Guide to Colleges is that it will, you will find that there are things that you agree and disagree with. And that's what an opinion does for a college when you're reading about it. So I think you're right in that the colleges are giving you factual information, but if you go and you sit in on a panel with faculty members, you're going to learn something about that school. You're going to learn something about it. Jen, John, anything I think that I've missed?
I think one thing I would add is that for several years I served on the local planning committee for our national college fair. The college fair is really I would tell you, it's a dying art form in terms of college recruitment, especially now that the virtual visits in the fall have happened. I think the way colleges visit our schools and our local territories is really going to change. I think some college admissions, I was just on a call yesterday with 4 deans of admissions who said, yes, we will continue to do some fall travel, but some of us may just stick to the virtual visits because it's so much more fruitful. We can do 8 visits in the same time it took us to do 4 in a day. There's no cost for us associated with it. So I think the way we see college admissions officers, yes, we will see them again live and in person, but I think a lot of this will continue to happen virtually. So the NACAC that Darnell talked about, that's our National Association of College Admission Counseling. They have many college fairs scheduled, and you can do these from anywhere. And if you follow our college counseling Twitter, it's Vikings, the number 2, Vikings 2 College. We publicize those when they're available. But that's just a couple of words about college fairs. There's a question about the college mailing list. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare. Let's see if I can get back in here. I want to reshare, if I can, the college mailing list. So the question was about, do I join these individually or from the PSAT? So let me go back. I think I confused some people. On the PSAT, if you check, yes, I want colleges to know about me, the College Board can sell your name. Colleges can buy. They can say, I'd like to buy 130,000 names of female students in Ohio who said they have a B or higher and want to study communications. Okay, so that's something a college can do. They get your name, your email address, and they send that out to 130,000 kids saying, this is my college, I'm ABC College, and if you're interested, click here and we will add it to our mailing list. That's called college search. The college has found you. What we're talking about are our kids identifying themselves to a college, and you need to do that one by one. So this is an example of a student joining the Rollins College mailing list, right? So you would go on to rollins.edu, that's their college website, and you're going to click on admissions, and then you're going to click on request information right down here. And then you're going to fill out that form. Again, these are students that are doing this. This is, parents don't join a mailing list, right? If you say, one of the questions is going to say, what year do you graduate from high school? If you say 1989, they're going to get a good chuckle out of it, right? This should be 2022, 2023. They don't want the parents on the mailing list. They may ask your child to add a parent mailing email address because sometimes they do send out specific communication. And later in the process, a parent's email will be included on the common application. But at this stage, they are communicating with your children. Does that make sense? Anything else you guys would add to that?
Well, just one quick word on that. As Jen mentioned earlier, when you go onto the admissions website to get yourself on the mailing list, sometimes it's really easy. The link that you want to click is right there, no sweat. But sometimes it's a project to seek out where in the world is that link. And so sometimes as a family, you might work on that together to see if you can find it. And if all else fails, obviously we're around as well, so we're here to help with that. But sometimes it's a little tricky, but usually not too bad.
Great. Do we have other questions in the chat? Oh, you guys, well, we just want to thank you so much for attending today's program. We hope that you learned something about embarking on this seeing colleges during this time. We appreciate you spending time with us, and more importantly, we love the time with your children. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to being in communication soon. Anything else, John, Jen?
Nope. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Take care.
Thank you.